and what we have ahead of us, the way in which we're approaching the problems and the way in which we will bring solutions, also gives me some comfort. Why did the team pit Lewis on lap 11 for the hard tyres? There's two aspects to that question. Why lap 11? Why the hard tyres? We saw really from quite early on in the race that the degradation, the amount that the car gets slower with each passing lap due to the tyres wearing, that the degradation was higher than we were expecting. We started the race along with everybody else on the soft rubber, and after trying to hang on to the tail of the Ferrari in front for several laps, we started to damage our soft tyres and we started to suffer the lap time penalty as a consequence. We therefore needed to get off them. That's why we were one of the earlier stops to come in on lap 11 to get off that soft tyre. We put the hard tyre on because we felt it would be the tyre that would give us the best chance of having a decent stint in the middle of the race with lower degradation on that hard rubber to allow us to recover the lost ground we made in the first stint. How come the degradation on the softs seemed to catch teams out, and why was there no grip on the hards? Well, I'm not sure that it caught teams out. Every team goes into the race with a pre-race estimate of what the tyre degradation might be. At an optimistic end, you might assume that it would be manageable, and then you have models to say what you would do if the degradation actually turned out to be at the pessimistic end of your estimation. Bahrain is a famously rough asphalt. The rubber gets really beaten up by the surface of the track, and degradation is always high at Bahrain. You'll have seen for many years, if you follow this sport, that it tends to be a two-stop or even a three-stop race sometimes, when a lot of the circuits are one-stop races. So it is a high degradation track, and these are new cars. And it just turned out that the degradation that all of us saw in the race was at the higher, more pessimistic end of our pre-race models compared to the more optimistic ends that we embarked on the race with. Why was there no grip on the hards? Well, there was grip. There was grip on the hards. It's difficult to get it warmed up. So when you come out of the pits with these new, for 2022, lower blanket temperatures, that tyre just isn't quite in its working range as you leave the pits. So for a corner or two, half a lap, it's really quite treacherous. But then once the heat comes into the rubber, the grip is there. It's not as grippy as a soft tyre, nor as a medium, but it has better degradation to go with it. So there is grip, it's just a slightly different way of it being delivered, and it takes a few corners for it to come in. I'd like to say a big thank you to Symix for spamming us with a number of questions ahead of this race debrief. I'd just like to say to Symix, who sent us in a very fetching cartoon, wipe away your salty tears, because we are going to answer your question this time round. Do we think there is room for improvement in the pit stop times? Yes, definitely. There is definitely room for improvement. But we went into the race with a particular objective in mind. These tyres wheels and tyres are very big and very heavy compared with last year's. But that's not the only change. It's also a standard wheel rim, and the interface between the wheel rim and the car is standard as a consequence. And the wheel pegs, the things that actually protrude out of the wheel that help the wheel to grip the car when you do it up with the wheel nut, those pegs are not really ideal for a nice slick pit stop, a nice quick change as we've got used to seeing in recent years. And they're standard components, and so we have to sort of do the best we can with them. We went into the race knowing that you can have two styles of pit stop with this standard wheel and these heavy tyres. You can do an okay one, you can get really quite competitive times, but also it can go really horribly wrong for you and you can lose many, many seconds. So we went into this race determined to ensure that we would not have the nightmare scenario. Yes, we would ship a second or two here or there in our pit stop, but in this early race, conservative and safe was the right choice for us, and to enable us to do our stops without any hideous nightmare and know that we've got the coming weeks in order to refine it, to try and change the sort of small details so that we can then work it back to competitive times while also guaranteeing that we don't get in that nightmare scenario. Why were we so slow on the straights? I think most of that is coming from the size of our rear wing. And if you look at the cars coming down the straights one after the other, and just look at the frontal area of the rear wings that each team has, you'll see that we were running the biggest rear wing. And rear wings are a large factor in how much drag the car has, and the amount of drag the car has is a large factor in what the end of straight speed of the car will be. Now, there will be other differences, of course. There may be small differences in the power of the engines, but I don't think any of us, none of the teams have got a proper handle on that at the moment, exactly what the pecking order is. And they're likely to be small, if differences at all. The rear wings, on the other hand, you can see the differences there, and we did have the biggest wing. Now, you might ask, why were we running the biggest wing? And if we're running the biggest wing, why didn't we have the performance in our car that we might have hoped for? Well, that, of course, is the million-dollar question here. We've spent a lot of time and effort and love on trying to make the car as quick as it possibly can be, but we haven't yet delivered something competitive. And we're having to run a big wing at the moment to give ourselves the downforce of doing the best lap time we can with our car, but it is falling short of what is necessary for competitiveness. So, with a bit of luck, and in the coming races, we will rapidly improve our car. And that will allow us also to drag some rear wing out of it and will allow us to pick up our speed on the straight as a consequence. When will we fix the porpoising? This is another very good question and a very important question for the fate of our championship. Porpoising is something that caught all of the teams out when they first launched this generation of cars just a few weeks ago. The mechanisms that cause it, while not completely understood yet, are rather different from what the commentators of the sport are providing on the web and on your TV screens. How quickly each team can get on top of it and fix it is going to be quite an important thing for determining what the pecking order in the sport will be. We were caught out by it quite badly, and the amount of porpoising on our car, especially when we put our first race upgrade package on in the last winter test, the amount of porpoising we saw has been quite extreme. We're starting to get it under control, but at the moment we're getting it under control a little bit by having to throw away the basic performance of our car as a smaller problem in order to get the bigger problem, the uncontrollable bouncing, slightly under our control. In the coming weeks, and of course with massive pressure on us to make sure we deliver this quickly, we will find improvements that get on top of the bouncing while not throwing away the underlying performance of the car in order to do so. We can't obviously wait to deliver those solutions. We're hard at work back here in the factory to find them, make them, get them to the car, and then enjoy the benefits of them and hopefully start to realize some of the inherent goodness that we have built into this car that should put us back up where we want to be at the front end of the grid. Where do we go from here after Bahrain? How big is the job ahead of us to compete for wins? Well, of course, it isn't just competing for wins that we wish to do, it's competing for championships. That's the purpose of our team. That's what we exist for. And yes, wins are a part of that journey, but it's championships we're focused on. It is a big job. We're something like 0.6 of a second, maybe more off the pace of the leaders in Bahrain. But we are carrying a lot of problems. And a lot of problems that all have solutions. And all of those solutions are within our compass to deliver. Yes, it is challenging, but actually after winter testing, I'd feared worse. And I think actually the performance improvement we've managed to deliver from winter testing to the first race, while perhaps not visible to the fans and perhaps not reassuring to the fans, is reassuring in-house here within the team. And what we have ahead of us, the way in which we're approaching the problems and the way in which we will bring solutions, also gives me some comfort that we will get back to a competitive car quite swiftly, and that we will be able to pursue the objective we have of championships. It is a big job. It is an ambitious car. Some will argue that perhaps we've bitten off more than we can chew with it, but we are very good chewers in this team, and we intend to put these problems right as quickly as possible, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 races, but in any case, we will put them right, and we will get our car back at the front of the grid, competing as we all intend to allow us to pursue our dream of championship success. Thank you very much for all your questions, and we will be back next week after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix to answer more of them.